Hello and good morning. Uh, in my session today, I want to look with you at a common thought that crosses many decision makers' minds when they decide to go with changing their SIM solution. Usually, when we take a conversation around this and when we look at it, many people have the reasons to go through this change or to go through this decision. And one of the most common reasons is when they say that what they have is currently an old generation SIM and they're looking towards a next generation solution. And this is justified by them believing that it lacks many features that other solutions have. And as a result, they see that it either not generating any alerts or they're not getting any alerts out of it, or on the contrary, they see that it's generating lots of false positives and lots of false positive alerts. Ironically, in some cases, they bring the two reasons together that they're not getting any useful alerts or not getting any alerts, and at the same time, they're getting lots of false positives. While these might be on top of the list, other reasons exist, but all of these reasons they have in common one thing, that the decision maker is lacking or feeling a low value realization out of the solution that they currently have. And if you look at why they feel this way or why they feel that they're not getting the value they were expecting out of this solution, usually it comes to the way some solutions as a software are deployed. In a common deployment lifecycle, this is a textbook software development lifecycle example, which starts with planning and then goes through all the different cycles of the SDLC or the software adaption lifecycle, and then it ends with maintaining and then planning for the next iteration or the next phase of the software. Almost, if not all, SIM solutions in the market are commercial off-the-shelf software, where the deployment lifecycle slightly differs from the software development lifecycle. And what happens over here is that many organizations take the same approach of deployment of other commercial softwares to deploying their SIM solution. So they just go and follow the same cycle when they're deploying their SIM solution. But reality is, if you want to look at the successful SIM deployments all around the globe, you will find that most of them have the same common thing, that the use cases creation and log sources integration is not a single time task, but rather it's being looked at as an iterative cycle where organizations keep evaluating and reviewing the use cases that they have, and then they go and design new use cases, whether to address the regulatory changes, compliance changes, or most importantly, to adapt to the evolving and the new types of threats that the organization is facing and is detecting, whether on its own or as a part of industry or a nation or being out there and in the world and facing all the threats others are facing. Once these new cases are designed, then you will go through adding log sources that will empower that use case and will help you gain visibility towards addressing these concerns that you have. And then you will create the use case and test it. And when you're happy with the results and they're meeting the expectations, this is when you will roll the use case into production. One thing to highlight over here is that a use case is not only a correlation rule. It expands beyond that to being the correlate to being the correlation rules that triggers alerts when that threat or that pattern is happening. But it also includes the dashboards, which shows you the information all in one place. It includes the decisions that you make on which logs needs to be retained only and which logs need to go to your correlation rules so you can trigger alerts against them. And this is a key and important factor in making sure that your rules are not being a source of annoying false positive alerts, but rather being an actual value to your business. And when you receive an alert or notification, that's something that needs to be attended to immediately. Use case contents and components also expand to multiple factors like reports, for example, and escalation procedures and handling procedures, and all of that. When you take a look at this methodology of deploying your SIM solution and how you want to look at it, this is when you start thinking and looking into how things are currently going, whether with reports you've been reading, case studies you've been looking at, or conversations you've been having with fellow decision makers and fellow security professionals. Many people in the crowd, if you look at what they do, what commonly happens at their end is maybe they operate their SIM solution like a firewall, meaning they deploy it once, they apply rules on it once, and then they expect it to keep generating the same value over the months and years of deployment, even without touching it again or going over there and making sure that it's continuously updated and the rules over there and the use cases over there are maintained to address the new challenges. Another thing is that many organizations, they focus on out of the box stuff. They only stick to it and they keep using it without paying any attention to what the organization needs or can benefit more using the solution. And that's usually a common reason or a common trigger for choosing quantity over quality when evaluating between different technologies or deciding on which technology to go with. And that can be a real challenge, especially that many organizations take if it's not broken, don't fix it approach towards their SIM solution. So they avoid touching it, whether with adding more content, adding more use cases, and creating more use cases, or even not updating and upgrading it to get the latest patches, the latest capabilities that comes with the product. And as a result, as they keep that software lacking behind over the years, when they try to evaluate it against the new solution in the market or the new product that they have been approached by its team to consider it and to evaluate it, they get the false impression that the technology that they currently have is lacking behind. While in many cases, you will find what's really happening is that they have been abandoning that technology or that solution and not applying the updates and upgrades that they're even entitled for as a part of their support and subscription maintenance agreement. And they just keep that solution lose value and not keep up with the requirements that they have. To move away from these challenges and to make the solution rise and shine, there's this very simple recipe for success. And it all starts with communication, discussing the challenges that the current system is currently facing, whether with the people who are using it and operating it, or with the different stakeholders that are expecting to get value of the current system and the solution that you have in place. This will help you have a more realization towards what needs to be created towards customizing the solution and customizing its components towards fitting into your environment and fitting your requirements better so you can get more value out of the solution. As this conversation goes on, you will realize that at some point you will need to consider an operational culture rehabilitation. And this is something very critical because after using the solution for a few days or a few weeks, you will find some specific cultures, a culture of usage happening. So people start by default ignoring everything, or people start using the solution in a specific way that contradicts with the value that you're expecting out of the solution, or the value the solution can actually deliver to your environment and can deliver to your security operations. And when we're looking at all of that, all of this will help you establish the first blocks of your value realization roadmap, a roadmap that you will need to guide you through the journey of realizing more value of your current security operations. And the key question that you need to answer over here is, what's your target? Is your target to own a next generation security operations software or platform? Or do you need to run next generation security operations? And that is a very crucial question to look into and to answer. Because if you answer it most probably as run next generation security operations, you will realize that technology is only a part or an enabler of running next generation security operations. You need to look at the bigger picture here. You are running cybersecurity intelligence and operations, where SAM acts as the heart of technology that collaborates with multiple technologies in your security operations, that empowers the communication with multiple technologies in your security, but mostly it's an interface tool for the people in your security operations. And when we look at people, many security operations enable security people only to use a platform or a product or a set of products. But instead, and that's when we're talking about maybe you need to adapt different approach or a different culture before you decide to abandon the current technology and adapt a new one. You need to look at how people are enabled in the security operations environment that you have, how they're enabled to fulfill the wider task of running security operations or running next generation security operations. And once that change is introduced and those people are able to fulfill the bigger picture towards securing the organization, this is when you will start realizing the actual value of your security operations software that you have or your SAM that you currently have, and you will start realizing the benefits of the investments you have been making over the years and the different security technologies that you have. For people to be able to utilize these technologies and for these investments to pay off, these need to be governed with processes and procedures. Processes and procedures that properly define what's going on, what needs to go on when a specific threat or even a specific action happens. And this will help you standardize how you run the operations. And most importantly, this will help you over time automate many of the tasks that you have. And with this automation, this means that you will reduce the burden on your team that's running your security operations. And at the same time, this will help increase the efficiency of the team because now you're automating many of the repetitive stuff so your team is not distracted by that repetitive stuff, and your team can take faster actions because they have all that information available at their hand, so they can make a decision as early as possible and as soon as possible to help minimize and even in some cases eliminate the threats that have been detected by the technology. And your people is more than capable to handle because they have been well trained to handle it and look into it. When we're looking at the values that your next generation security operations need to deliver, the key values to deliver on is to reduce risks and exposures and reduce the time to detect and response. And at the same time, reduce the risks, cost, and reduce the operational costs. So you can invest money in enabling people and adding more technologies that can help you gain more visibility to even reduce more risks and reduce the exposure furthermore and reduce the time to detect and to respond. And all of that, as a result, will help you increase the team efficiency so they can handle the threats faster, smarter, and with full with fully informed decision making process so they can take the right decision from the first time every time. When making evaluations and making decisions, especially when you're looking at technologies, one of the key things that you need to look at, or one of the methods you need to avoid, is the most interesting one is, and the funniest one is, in my opinion, is SAM versus SOAR. Unfortunately, many decision makers are looking at SOAR as a replacement of SAM, while reality is SOAR, to be able to orchestrate and to automate, it needs to get information from multiple sources. And one of the crucial sources that it needs to get information from is a SAM solution, because SAM will be retaining contents and logs for a very long time. SOAR needs that to go and compare what's happening in the past, to go and realize which other systems are affected by the threat that it was notified to, and usually it's notified about those that threat that it's investigating and automating the response to using the SAM solution. Another math that needs to be looked into is analysis versus analytics, or SAM versus UBA. Reality is each of these technologies exist for a purpose. Analysis is there to detect repeating threats at the speed of the machine in real time or in near real time. As that threat pattern happens again, you need the technology to catch it, detect it, and take the action you told it to take. Maybe using the SOAR if you have introduced SOAR in your environment. And that's why you need to have analysis in your environment all the time. Once you have established a pattern where you are able to detect repeating threats and you have learned all the repeating threats that you have in your environment, now it's time to add analytics capability for your security operations. So you use analytics to find new threats or find emerging threats that are detectable based on detecting the change and shift in behavior. And that's where analytics really enables your security operations to run smartly. Once you find new patterns and new threats, you include those in your analysis. So now this is a new pattern that you have detected, that you have found that you were not aware of before, and now you tell your analysis solution to go and alert you as soon as it happens. Analysis runs on the spot on events that they happen. Analytics learn behavioral norms that takes time to happen it takes days, weeks, and months to learn these behaviors. And then once a shift happens, it's there to help you detect it. And in better world, in a more secure world, you'll find analysis and analytics collaborating together. Marketing terms competition really appears in SAM against XDR. XDR provides you maybe more in-depth integration with some specific uh, systems and log sources, but SAM provides you a wider vision and wider visibility. So XDR might go more in depth or might show you that it can perform more things, but reality is that it does not cover a real spectrum or a wide spectrum of systems and points compared to the SAM. In a real world or in an ideal world, you will realize that SAM and SOAR together can deliver maybe more value to you than an XDR can deliver. And as you can see, the trend in the market or the approach in the market where SOAR is becoming a core capability of the SAM rather than an independent product. This is when you realize that SAM and SOAR together, a technology you already invested in, which is the SAM, and a technology you're evaluating, which is most probably the SOAR, that together they can deliver more value to you. And this is, for example, what we are doing or the approach we're adapting with ArcSight, where after we have acquired a source solution, we have decided not to make SOAR an independent solution, but rather an integrated component of our security operations platform, ArcSight, where all existing and new customers will receive that SOAR capability at no additional charge, so they can realize the benefit of the SOAR and what it can provide to empower their SAM deployment and their SAM system. Another point to look at is the comparison that sometimes goes between a SAM solution that runs on the cloud versus another solution that runs on-prem. Reality is, if you deploy your SAM solution, what really matters is what fits your environment better and what fits your environment most. If you still run many of your workloads on-prem, maybe it makes sense to keep your SAM on-prem. If you run many of them on the cloud, maybe it makes sense to keep it on the cloud, but keep in mind that when you're doing that, maybe you will start having some risks where all your workloads, including your SAM, is running on the cloud. So you have a heavy dependence on a single vendor or on a single platform. Many organizations, when we hear them talking about the cloud deployment of the SAM, it's because they want to run it in a place where it constantly keeps getting updated, while at the same time they're neglecting to update the SAM that they currently have deployed on-prem, and maybe they would have realized the same benefit if they started adapting an approach where they continuously monitor, enhance, update their SAM, and they keep reviewing the use cases, adding more use cases so they can address the new and evolving threats that they are facing. I hope this gives you a point or two to think about. Thanks for dedicating the time for attending this session. Be healthy and safe, and hopefully in the next forum and next year, we'll be able to meet in person. Thank you and have a nice day.